Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Without Apology. As you can see, Steve is still not with us. So, oh, there he is.
I've reappeared. I've come back. If you guys aren't on YouTube, by the way, you saw none of that, and this is very awkward and weird now.
Yeah, definitely check out the YouTube for all the visual aspects of this wonderful broadcast. As you know, River and I are taken. However, Steve is on the market.
Oh, geez.
And
I
if
am
you're
single.
looking for the visual aspects of Steve, the YouTube channel is where
Wait,
it's at.
this is the first episode they have seen my new cut. Well, I mean, it's not really new anymore. It's like back to like,
Yeah.
it's like not really fresh, but it's like it's a little bit of
The blind Amish barber did you good.
What do you say?
Nothing.
Listen, all right, we're not going back. We're not going back to that.
Did absolutely nothing.
We're actually, listen, it was great.
Looking good,
it was
man.
great. Okay, when it was fresh, it was like something somewhat new, and everyone was like, "Whoa!" And it was a drastic change from my long-haired, like Chuckle Minsky looking.
Everyone was like, "Whoa!"
They were like, "Whoa!" So yeah, and we're back though. We're back. Target unleashed me. So.
That's right.
You know what the best song is?
No, do not. No. Everybody, this is Isaac's childhood right here. I hope you're going to edit that out and like put it in just regularly.
The Super Smash Brothers Brawl soundtrack
Not a hot take.
is the best soundtrack
That's a
of
hot
any
take.
video game ever.
That's a hot take. It's still playing. He's still playing it, River. River, he's still playing it.
And listen how it gets so deep.
He's like, listen to how it gets so deep. Just like the passion in it and everything. He's even whistling to it. This is just what they're going to listen to now for 20
This is awesome.
seconds at least.
You're welcome.
Come to learn more about
This is awesome.
about God, and you get to listen to a Smash Brothers soundtrack while you're at it too.
Isaac just having fun.
This podcast has gone downhill. Everybody, we're done. We're canceled. We're getting
Wait.
canceled. Oh my goodness.
2 hours later.
Just this whole
Dude,
entire-
how awesome is
Dude, it's sick. I'm not arguing that's not sick. He's putting it up to the microphone like they couldn't hear it before.
Can we just have like Star Wars music going on in the background
Dude,
all the time?
The whole time, but not actually while we're talking, please.
No, while we're talking.
No, like
Wow.
edit it
that.
over it, please.
All right, so the first 5 minutes, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for welcome to Without Apology, for real.
Nice.
We're taking a break for Zach again. Every time.
Zach, what did you? Let's take a break for
Every
Zach
time. Zach barges into the studio awkwardly.
Zach casually just walks out right now.
Dude,
What
if
is he
you don't
doing?
watch the YouTube, what are you doing?
Dude, honestly, if you don't watch YouTube, you're missing so much.
The YouTube
of our
is
podcast.
hilarious.
Like he just is like sneaking in here.
Zach,
He's grabbing wires.
He's grabbing wires.
things.
we've been listening to video game music for the past 5 to 10 minutes,
So
it feels like.
if it makes you feel any better, you didn't really walk out anything too serious. It makes you feel.
What are
any
you
better.
talking about?
Okay,
That
listen,
was-
that was extremely serious,
Serious
and
thing
hype.
ever.
But,
oh,
like,
jeez.
I don't know, dude. We all just love Zach Beaver. I don't know what to tell you.
This
dude.
is an episode you need to be on YouTube for.
He has some
Facts.
nice
Hey,
boots.
go check out the
He does
Zach
have
Beaver
some
on
nice
Spotify.
boots.
You know how it is,
Oh,
dude.
he unplugged the light.
You know how it is.
He's
You
stealing
unplugged
our
the light.
lights.
He stole our
He's
light.
stealing them all.
He's stealing
Dude.
our light. He's actually stealing.
He's actually
straight
stealing
up,
our-
like,
wow.
He's
Zach.
walking out
Wow.
with our light. Are
There
you
he goes.
serious?
Bye, Zach.
And he's gone. And
And
just
just
like
like,
that,
and he dropped something.
he's just like that. He's gone. Out of our studio.
Okay, if you're not, we get like 70 listeners per episode, but our YouTube page is like dwindling. It's fine. This is a podcast, right?
That's facts.
Yeah.
But this is the episode where you should definitely check out the visual aspects
been-
on YouTube.
This is quality already.
This has been one of the funnier episodes.
We haven't even started.
We haven't done anything
This
yet.
was just
Well, we've
I've-
started, but I mean, you know.
I feel like it's just been Isaac on some weird energy, just like, ah! That's how I feel. And then
Just that energy.
that
and
Duel of
then
Fates
Steve
energy.
is just trying to talk about Jesus, and I'm low key dead but tired.
And then Zach comes in and steals
And
things.
Zach- So I don't even
He
know.
literally,
I
he
mean,
literally
welcome to
just
our
came
lives,
in and
guys.
stole a light that we were using.
Yeah, we were actually
we were using that.
That could have been lighting up your face, Isaac, or your face.
Oh, yeah, that was River's light.
Oh man,
That was your light.
Guys, you're gonna see all this grossness, man.
Gross.
All right. We're gonna jump in. We're gonna talk about something we have not been using, which is resolve. Resolve.
We resolved to talk about this podcast.
We did resolve to talk about resolve, but in fact, we have been talking about other things.
Remain unnamed.
That's okay, because this is a podcast where we're just hanging out.
All right.
We're talking about stuff, and we're honest, and we're open, and sometimes we listen to.
You need to close that tab right now, Isaac.
Nope.
The word resolved, if you look it up on your laptop, or
You sound so dead.
Hey, River's baked on
I sound baked, dead, toasted, all the things. The word resolve is to decide firmly on a course of action. And we're gonna be sitting in Daniel chapter 2, which is part of, I think it's a 12 chapter book in the Bible. It's one of the prophets. And basically what's going on, I'm pretty sure it's 12. Yeah, it is. Look at me knowing things.
Wow.
Anyways, so basically a little bit of the backstory. Jerusalem has just been taken over by Babylon. Babylon disperses a lot of the people from Jerusalem all over, I guess now Babylon, and takes a bunch of the young, the best of the best people and puts them in places of power.
Right.
So Daniel.
Assimilation.
That is right. Assimilation. Daniel and his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who are also known as Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who we're going to call the boys. Steven?
So when Babylon took over, they renamed them, gave them Babylonian names.
Right. So those four are considered some of the best of the best of the best, who are young, strong, athletic, capable of learning really, really well, just intelligent men. Anyway, so they are higher up people, considered to be wise people in the king's court. And basically what we're going to be going through is Nebuchadnezzar and his dream. We're just going to call him King Nebi because I hate saying Nebuchadnezzar.
Dude, Nebuchadnezzar's
over and over and over again. So King Nebi. So King Nebi has a dream, and he is greatly disturbed by this, and he's freaking out, and he's like, oh my goodness, get all the magistrates and the magicians and all the wise people of the kingdom. Get them, those guys, I guess. And get them over here, and I need them to, one, tell me what my dream was, and then interpret it for me. And they're like, if you only just tell us what your dream was, then we can interpret your dream. And he's like, no, that's not what I asked. I want you to tell me what my dream was. So you're not just someone just telling me whatever, which is fair, but also I understand both sides. Anyways, so Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the boys, they are considered the wise people. So the king's guard comes to take them into the court, one, so that they can tell him the dream, and then he'd kill them. And he's like, whoa, hold on. Why is the king's decree so urgent? Can we have a few moments to pray about this? We need to
talk to our God.
Exactly.
Right.
So they resolved to talk to their God very long ago about everything. So they're very dedicated people. So they start praying vigorously for God, what is the king's dream? I feel like I'm doing this. I'm going over it. If either one of you wants to pick up, I'm fine with that. But basically, they start vigorously praying. Give us the king's dream and then the interpretation of it. And then he does. And then they have this little prayer from 2:20 to 2:23. And it's really cool. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's matter. So, in their prayer, in their petition, they're like, what is going on with the king, God? Crying out to him. God answers them. Daniel then goes before the king, and he interprets it for him. And then basically, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. So he interprets it for the king. The king is satisfied, and then Daniel is promoted, and the king, he worships Daniel's God in the end because Daniel's resolve to follow God and to praise him and know that God is in control. The king of Babylon and they don't
Right.
they don't worship, just their God. They worship a bunch of gods.
Right.
But he's like, oh my goodness, your God is a great God. So the king resolves to worship him then.
Right.
Right.
So
It's pretty sweet.
2 sentences.
Yes.
Whew, that was a lot.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry,
But
guys.
two sentences. King Nebuchadnezzar has taken over Jerusalem and told them, hey, you're all going to be Babylonians now. And they're like, we have no choice, okay. And he's like, who's your smartest, your most athletic, your best people, whatever? And they're like, here's Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
The boys.
And so the boys. So Nebi takes the boys. He goes, you have new names. They're Babylonian names. You're going to do what I tell you. We're going to treat you like Babylonians. We're going to give you good stuff. We're going to educate you. You're going to blah, 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 whatever. Okay? Daniel 1:8. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. But the official told Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. So back then, how they solve everything is they would just kill people. It's pretty effective. I mean,
Pretty good,
honestly, like the king's like, you do this or you die. And like, that's pretty good motivator.
Right.
So what's happening is they want to train these guys. It's not just the boys, it's some other people too. And they're going to train them to be the best Babylonians. And Daniel says, I'm not going to eat some of that stuff, right? Kosher law back then. I'm not going to eat some of this stuff. I'm not going to drink some of this stuff. I'm not going to do anything that shows that I am worshiping the king or other Babylonian gods. I'm only going to do what God tells me to do. And this guard says, you know you're going to die, because that's how things get solved around here, when you are weaker than the other people. So basically, Daniel goes vegetarian or paleo or whatever. And then later in the scripture, we find out Daniel and the boys are like in better shape and they're smarter and they're all this other stuff. Like they're better than everyone else. So everyone switches over to what Daniel's doing, right? And then when it comes to the prophecy and stuff, no one can answer it because obviously magicians and stuff aren't very real. So he ends up killing a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so this resolve that we see here in verse 1:8. So at the very beginning, Daniel and the boys resolve not to defile themselves, right? They will not do anything that God doesn't want them to do. And then the dream happens in the next chapter, which is sometime later. And when the dream happens, that resolve that is still in place benefits them immensely, i.e. they don't die, right? And they correctly interpret the dream. And at the end of interpreting the dream, after all the craziness that just happened, they're talking about God. They're not talking about Daniel or the boys or Nebi. They're talking about God.
Right.
And Nebuchadnezzar goes, okay, this God's for real. So everyone, we're going to worship this God, right? And so resolve is that idea that no matter what is happening, you're going to follow God, right? So literally, like, these guys they will die. They will die. They don't do it. The king says, death. They don't perform well, death. They don't interpret the dream, death. But they resolve that they are going to praise God no matter what happens, and they're going to kneel to God and obey the God no matter what happens. And we see what happens there.
How effective though the king is, because it's like, all right, I'll kill you. All right,
I'll kill you.
And then if you don't, boom, he does it. That's crazy effective. That worked though. It's like really made things just whip into shape. I don't know. I'm not saying that we should do that, but I'm like, wow, really gets things going.
We should not do that.
We should not do that. But I think, wow, how effective that guy was.
Nice. So my definition of resolve actually fits this like so well. It's to come to a definitive or earnest decision about. And then I looked up earnest just to make sure that I get this 100% understood. I definitely knew what earnest meant, like going into this 100%. I didn't look this up for the definition at all.
Go on then.
Resulting from or showing sincere and intense conviction. So to see Daniel basically say, I'm resolved, like to use this word specifically, I think he could have said, no, I believe, I trust, I don't doubt. I think he could have said all of those, but instead I think that he's using this like for a very, very specific reason.
Yeah.
Because it's the idea of, I have this conviction in my heart about these certain things. And I think that when you tackle Old Testament stuff, it can be a little bit tricky because you're like, oh, but I have resolve in these 10 commandments, or I have like resolve in this. But like this is like him saying, no, I trust, I have resolve in God, that not only is he going to keep me okay, but he's also going to show himself through it. And like you were saying, Isaac, at the end, they weren't even worshiping the king anymore. They were worshiping and they saw God working through some sort of resolve that Daniel showed in it. And that's the whole entire idea of resolve, I think. And like Daniel's such a good example of it. Like with this,
he's like our prime example of it.
yeah. And like even then you could look at like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego a little bit later
those guys.
in the boys.
The boys.
You could look at the boys
crew.
like with the fire and everything like that too. Like they have resolve to say, no, I'm not gonna like bow down and worship you. And I'm gonna completely, I'm gonna completely just trust and like it's more than just a trust. Like you get what I'm saying, right? It's more than just like this trust. It's like I have faith that you're gonna see something after this that is like no other.
Yeah.
So spiritual resolve caused them to glorify God in a spiritual crisis, right? And spiritual resolve is fueled by a close relationship with God, right? These guys, they're praying, they're in constant communication, they're praying with each other, for each other, to God, right? And this spiritual resolve that they have is not just something that popped up overnight, but because they were able to worship God in Jerusalem and love God and pray with God and establish those habits, and then they got moved to Babylon, that resolve stayed with them. But they had to choose that they would not be assimilated, right? That no matter what happened, like they were going to stick with God. And your heart is defined by one place, but we exist in another. And that's the same for us, right? What's his face is always saying, in the world, not of the world, right? You're in the world, but you're not of the world. Yeah. You ever heard like our citizenship is in heaven. Our heart is defined by one place, by God, by heaven, by the truth, but we exist in another. And when that resolve comes forth and you're able to see that, huge things happen, big things happen for the Lord.
Yeah.
And it's not all gumdrops and roses as we're about to see.
Yeah.
In Daniel chapter 3.
Whoa.
I know, right? So this is some time later, and Nebuchadnezzar has kind of like so what Babylon would do is they wouldn't just worship one god. They'd be like, if we worship all the gods are on our side, right? So like for a while there, they were like, yes, the God of Isaac, Jacob, and Abraham, right? The real God. And now they're kind of like, okay, we need all the gods, right?
Yeah.
And so King Nebi he's going to put up a 60 cubit high, 60 cubit wide statue of something, some kind of god.
Let him know.
Or is it of himself? It might be of himself. I don't know. He's putting up, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's not.
It says
himself.
right, chapter 3, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold. Okay, so that's pretty much all we know. 60 cubits high, 60 cubits wide, and set up in plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So everyone can see it, right? He then summoned the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the other providential officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up, right? So we know this image is not a god because it literally says he had set up. So all those guys, it names them all again. I don't want to go through them all again. And all the officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. You ever seen VeggieTales? Where it's the bunny?
The bunny, baby.
I love the bunny. I didn't eat my soup or my bread, just a
Blake Reed
bunny.
was just singing that song today.
Dude, the bunny is the best song ever. I love that song.
I think VeggieTales actually does a good job because they make like this giant chocolate bunny and they're like, bow to this bunny.
Yes.
And it's hilarious because it's like the dumbest thing ever, but it's a man-made image that is clearly not anything special. And that's kind of what's going on here. And so they're like, Nebi gets everyone. And he's like, all right, everybody, bow to my thing that I just made, right? And it like represents all the gods or whatever. But the thing here is that this thing is massive, absolutely massive.
90 by 90 feet.
60 by 60.
No,
cubits?
cubits,
Yeah.
yeah.
To feet.
The math.
I did
Cubits to math.
60 times 18 divided by 12 to get 90 by 90.
Okay, big math guy.
That's a big math.
Dude, I am taking
Okay, big math
quantitative
guy.
reasoning.
Math.
Yeah.
And so what happens is Nebuchadnezzar's like, all right, everyone come bow to this thing, right? And that's the thing about Babylon it's always going to demand conformity, right? And it says later on, come bow to this thing, or your house will be reduced to rubble, and you will be torn limb from limb. Death,
Yep.
right? Always the big threat. And we actually talked about this here at Grace, and the cool thing is that the analogy that was used is that there's always Babylon, and there's always Jerusalem, right? There's always Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Babylon. And so the culture, Babylon, is always going to demand conformity. And I think that's so, like, especially these days, like, you talk about, no, yeah, go.
Like acceptance of everyone, like, and like,
Right.
well, as Christians, like, we're like called to be set apart. Like,
Right,
be
you're in
be
this
holy
world,
for I am
not of
holy, right? So it was like, we can't let that standard fall, you know?
Exactly.
So it's that same kind of, resolve that we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have that resolve similar, exactly like Daniel and his 3 friends,
Right.
When it comes into like, this world that we're living in currently, like America is going to have us like want to believe all sorts of nonsense, honestly, like be like,
Well, like with
This one's
this
gonna
culture, like with the cancel culture and the like, you've offended me and like all this stuff, like everybody in today's culture has to conform,
yeah,
right, to whatever's going on, or you get canceled, right?
Right.
Yeah. I even think though that like you could take this into perspective. At least this, and the one thing that I'm thinking of right away is like if you're raised in a town and then you are raised a Christian, you go to the same church, you're enjoying it, and then all of a sudden you move away to college.
Yeah.
Like think about it for a second. You're in your Jerusalem here for the longest time, and all of a sudden you move out into a community that's probably not exactly what Jerusalem's like at all.
yeah.
You're not necessarily worshiping something necessarily different. You definitely can. You definitely can go out there and do whatever
Well,
you
may
want. and
you may
waste
not
your-
be worshiping a 90 by 90 statue, but you're
But you're
worshiping,
worshiping something.
what the culture tells you should be worshiping.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, like I think what I mean by that is like you could definitely still completely have like a devout faith and everything, and if you're
Yeah.
moving a completely way to college, like you're not being, I don't want to say forced, but you're being pressured.
Yeah.
Oh,
For sure,
absolutely.
you're being pressured, and so like that's just what I think about. Or even if you just move in general, like you don't have to be in college. You can just be any age. You move from your natural
You're
comfort.
outside Jerusalem.
Yeah, your Jerusalem is your comfort, and all of a sudden you're moving into something that's uncomfortable, which is Babylon, and that is like that's completely some sort of way where you're going to get forced to try to believe whatever that Babylon is.
Right.
Right. You're gonna get swayed, and I think that no matter how you look at it, like you're exactly right, and that analogy is correct. It's like there's always a Jerusalem, there's always a Babylon, and when I heard that, I was like, yeah, dang, like that's
Right.
dang, that's
Like,
true.
we think of this
Yeah.
ancient culture like, who are you guys making people all think the same thing, worshiping the same thing, and being made fun of and killed if you're not? I'm like, that's more relevant than we like to think. And so what happens is Nebi calls everyone and he's like, bow to this thing. And the boys, like, okay, this thing is huge, right? So this has taken months, years to build.
Yeah.
So they're thinking about this and they're praying about this and they are choosing to stick with their resolve that they resolved a long time ago and choosing to keep that going. And they know one day Nebi's going to say, everyone bow to this. And they know like they got to choose right then. And it's not like everyone always rationalizes with themselves like, oh, it's just one thing of porn. It's just one like whatever. It's just one like little thing. It's not a big deal. At least I didn't kill somebody, right?
Yeah.
And so like this statue represents all gods, right?
Yeah.
So technically it represents their God. So
Right.
technically
Gotta
if they
bow
bow to it, they could just be bowing to the one God, right? Like you can always rationalize yourself into sin, right? And you could
absolutely.
always like do that. Well, technically, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And these guys, they go, no. Like beyond reproach, right? We're not even going to be questioned if we follow the one true God or not. And so like they're probably talking to themselves, they're probably debating with themselves, they're doing all this stuff, and then the day comes where Nebi wants them all to bow, right? And so we pick up somewhere, there it is.
Interesting.
and we
place.
pick up in 2:9, and they said, the king Nebuchadnezzar, may the king live forever. Your majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold. and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into the blazing furnace, death.
Do you mean 3:4?
Nope, I mean 3:9.
3:9?
Yep. But there are some Jews who have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your God nor worship the image of the gold you have set up. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought to the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you did not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. Then God will be able to rescue you from my hand." Oh, then what God? So it's a question. He says, then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Right?
The nerve this man has.
Dude, for real. And he's giving them another chance, right? So these guys are already on the fence, right?
Yeah.
They decide they're not going to worship. They're going to resolve to obey God, right? They're like put in front of the furnace and they're like, "Hey, I'm throwing you in there. You get one more chance." Now these guys, like, they don't have weeks, they don't have months. They have split second to decide. Are they going to stick with their resolve or not? So then King Nebuchadnezzar, oops, I skipped it. Oh, no, I didn't. Come on, Isaac. Man, so much is going on. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, "King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God, capital G, we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." So they're like, even if God doesn't save us, even if we just get blown up to ashes in there, right? We just want you to know we're not serving your gods, right? Even though we're dying. Verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed, right? He was giving them a second chance. He's still mad they won't worship the bunny. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. Man. And commanded some of the strongest soldiers in the army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent that the furnace was so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah.
Dude, how hot's a fire gotta be? The guys that are throwing them in there just die.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that were tied up and thrown into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, your majesty." And he said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Right? Nebuchadnezzar doesn't realize this is Jesus or this is an angel or something like that. But he knows that's not just a normal dude walking in there. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the straps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them, and they saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was the hair on their heads singed. The robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire around them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him, defiled the king's commandment, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces,
Let's reverse
and their
that.
houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon.
I got hit with the Uno reverse card right there. He said, "Actually, we're just gonna cut off everyone's heads if you say anything bad against this God."
They're like, "Yes," and he's like, "And we'll cut them to pieces," and they're like, "No."
I think, all right, this isn't funny, but I think it's hilarious. It's not.
This isn't funny, but I
it's
think it's
actually
hilarious.
I think it's kind of hilarious that the king isn't even like phased by the fact that the people he had throw in, like he has the mighty men who die, throw them in.
Right.
He jumped up in amazement that they were fine. Like, like he's like, oh, yeah, they died, whatever. Like he's just, I don't know. I think that was
He doesn't care about his
does not
goons.
care
He's
at
killing
all.
people all the time. He's cutting people into pieces, tearing them limb from limb, turning
know.
houses to rubble.
I just thought that was kind of humorous. I don't know why, but like it's like, wait, they're still alive. My guys died. Not fair.
But look what
Anyways,
happened.
But yeah,
The resolve of these guys from a long time ago, right? That they decided that they were only going to follow God, and literally no matter what happened, right? No matter if it was fire or sword or being torn limb from limb, which just sounds awful. That no matter what, they were going to follow God. And like they had so many outs, like so many different outs. They could have just worshipped and compartmentalized themselves, or just like asked God for forgiveness or something like that. They could have bowed out when the king gave them the second chance. They could have just assimilated in the first place like normal people, but absolutely not. And then we look at the end, and the king says, "This is what's going to happen because of you." Refusing to live by anyone else's word except for your God, then I refuse to let anyone in my kingdom live by anybody else's word but your God. And Babylon's going to be Babylon. So, and if they don't, cut them in pieces.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
I mean, even look at Paul though. I mean, you could take it. I mean, there's
Right.
even like the common. I don't want to say common day because like this was like like 57 or something like that, year 58 or something like that when some of these letters were written. But I mean, Paul goes through all these different things. And he's like, yeah, the only reason I'm doing this is just to spread the gospel because that's what I feel convicted of. That's what I feel like I have to go do. That's what I feel like God's pushing me to go do. That's his resolve. He's like, I'm going to do this no matter what. I'm going to get beaten. I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to get thrown in jail. I'm going to get tormented. I'm going to get all these different things. But like, and you can even see that in some of the letters too. Like I was reading Corinthians a little bit, 1 Corinthians, and just like that very, very first verse, it's the ending of 10, it kind of loops into 11, but it just says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Like that right there is just like the basis of all of Paul's like ministry for the longest time. And so like even like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, no, yeah, we're not gonna do that. They had like when your mom pulls you aside and says, all right, I'll give you one more chance to like say you're sorry and apologize for stealing the cookie. And then they still said, no, it was worth it to eat the cookie.
Yeah.
They say, no, it was worth it to actually not worship the God. And then like, I think it's so cool when they say, even if he doesn't deliver us from your majesty's hand, like, we're not going to.
Like, just know your God sucks.
Just know that, like, my God is still what I'm going to believe in. Because I still believe that he is miles better and, like, much more, like, trusting and much more good than your gods.
That's facts.
Dude, it's like, it's just crazy. Like, all of, like, that, like, whole entire example that they set. And then I think that Paul sets as well of just like it doesn't really matter what the heck I get into. I'm still going to go do this.
And at the end of the day, like after Daniel interprets the dream, they're talking about God. Mm-hmm. After they go into the fire and they come out, it's not like, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
It's like, they're talking about God.
Silly goose, you're supposed to die.
Yeah,
Right.
really. Exactly.
And some, just on a practical level, right? So the spiritual resolve caused them to glorify God in a spiritual crisis, right? You can get thrown in the fire. You worship true God, false God, spiritual crisis, or you get thrown in the fire. Mm-hmm. Spiritual resolve is fueled by a close relationship with God. If you think these guys just grew up in church, sang the songs, know the verses, didn't really care about God, do you think they would have been willingly thrown into a fire?
Yeah.
Do you think that they would have been countlessly threatened with literal death all the time?
Yeah.
Right? Do you think that they would have refused royal treatment all the time? No. But because they have such a close relationship with God, that fueled their spiritual resolve. And so just on a practical level, if you want that spiritual resolve and you are like maybe in a stage where you're not that close with God, right? Or you think God is distant or something like that, and I got news for you, like God hasn't moved, right? It's you that's moving away, or it's you that's not pursuing him. And so here are just like 3 steps, 3 things to help you fuel your spiritual growth. Number 1, regular focused time in the Bible.
That is right.
Right? Mm-hmm. Not like, oh, I read the verse of the day. Focus. Focus time, right? think critically, like think to yourself, like what's going on here? What's Jesus doing in this? What's God doing in this? What's like the meaning of this? What's actually happening here, right? Because God talks through the Bible and he communicates through the Bible all the time. Number 2, regular, ongoing prayer. These guys, the boys, always praying. Always. They had months, maybe years before the statue was built. Praying nonstop. When they're put in front of a crisis, they're like, hey, interpret this dream or you die. Can I pray real fast? Can I have a day to pray, right? And you best believe they were praying before that too. You look in the Bible, Jesus, before he crucified, he goes up and he prays.
Yeah. Gethsemane.
Yeah. Prayer is like one of the most important things you possibly do to help that spiritual relationship. Number 3, regular, deep relationship with God's people. The boys were not alone.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah.
There may be times where you are alone, but the boys were not alone. They had each other. They focused each other. They centered each other. They prayed for each other. They reminded each other of what's true. Fellowship is very important. There's a reason God didn't just make man, right? Man wasn't meant to be alone, right? There's a reason fellowship is real. There's a reason there's 12 disciples and not just Jesus going around doing his thing, right? Which he could have very easily done. So I encourage you, all 3 of those things are critical to fuel your spiritual growth. And I'll leave you with this. My last thing, and maybe we can go around and give like our last thing. At the end of Daniel telling the dream, at the end of Daniel interpreting the dream, and at the end of the fire, they're talking about God. And the whole time, every time they're like, Daniel, you're amazing. He's like, no, God is. Like, I'm here, I guess, but God's amazing. Like, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego go, you guys are awesome. You're fireproof. No, like, God protected us.
Right.
The people of God do not participate in the patterns of Babylon. And when they do, they disgrace the name of God.
Right.
We live in Babylon. If you're a Christian, you live in Babylon. America is Babylon. The world is Babylon. Like, you live in Babylon. And the people of God do not participate in the patterns, the sin, the ugliness, the inappropriate, the awful culture of Babylon.
Right.
And when they do, they disgrace the name of God.
Well, I'm going to leave mine and then you go. All right. So I guess for me, my challenge for you is know what you stand for, okay? Know what you're living for and know what you're following. Take some time this week. Journal, pray, meditate, whatever you do to have a clear head, get yourself kind of grounded and understand what you're living for. Like for me, I know that I have to do this. Like I do this on every Friday. I'll take an hour and I'll think about what I have been doing this past week or what I can plan to do better in the week to come. And I remind myself why I'm following God. I remind myself what he's already done for me. I count my blessings. Literally, like I spend like 10 minutes, like just literally, oh my goodness, God, you just did this in my life. God, you're making this thrive in my life. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all these things all the way through. So take a moment, remind yourself of who God is, submerge yourself in that truth, and resolve to follow him and live for him, even when it's difficult, because that's the God who does hard things, not hard things. He does things that are impossible when things seem like there's no hope at all. So take some time, remind yourself of the truth of who he is, spend some time in concentrated prayer and reading of the Bible, like Isaac is saying, but like just remind yourself who he is and remind yourself why you're following him. And if you're not following him, like, and you're just trying to get an understanding of who he is, I would challenge you to just like dig deep into scripture and find out more about him. So yeah, think critically about it. Similar to what you said.
Facts.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that whenever I'm hearing this kind of like message being portrayed, I always think of the question of, and I ask to everyone who's listening kind of this question as well. Think about how powerful is it when someone who's going through some sort of spiritual just troubles, I'll just call it troubles. How powerful is it when they're looking to God more than the actual trouble? How powerful is it when you're looking at saying, I know that all this crap is going on, but God has a purpose and God has a reason behind it.
Yeah.
It is probably, I am convinced that at least in the way that I think, the way that I see things, that is one of the most powerful things that I can see and look at and be reminded of God's working in the world, of just the way that God operates. And I challenge kind of just not even just as like a weekly thing, but just as a life thing. How can you look to God in those moments to show others? Because it's not just a for you sake thing. It's not just like a to make you feel better. It'll do that. Trust me. It'll 100% give you confidence that God has got your back in all these situations. But when people look at you and can see the fact that it's not you that's getting through this by yourself, it's you getting through this with God, it changes someone's perspective on a situation completely. And so I would just challenge all of us, I mean, myself included, I mean, everyone here in this room included, just kind of like whenever you have a situation that you feel like there is no answer to, or there is no resolve in, serious, like there just is no end goal in it, end thought in it, look to God. And when you see God in that situation, it's going to shine completely to other people as well. When you tell them, how the heck are you getting through this? How the heck are you managing this? How can you possibly be getting through this? Like, literally, if this was me, there's no way I could get through this. Well, the answer, you know the answer, but you got to share the answer. So that's kind of where my heart is with resolve and everything.
Yeah.
Talk to him.
And that resolve was founded before the crisis hit, right? Resolve right now, that no matter what happens, you're gonna run after God, right? No matter what happens, you're gonna fall on God. No matter what happens, like remember, your heart is defined by one place, one person, one God, but we live in another place.
Thanks.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Without Apology. Make sure to check us out on all social media, and please look at the YouTube, especially for this episode.
This episode was good.
Great episode to do it for.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll see you next week.